They forgot. Not just the dinner reservation or the time. It was me. My name. My face. My milestone. While I waited at a dim corner table clutching a graduation cap I once thought meant everything, they posted party photos for Chloe. Balloons. Champagne. Her face on the cake. It was her birthday. Again. And me? I became a ghost in my own story. But what if I told you? I wasn't always invisible. What if I told you there's a reason they erased me? And it wasn't just neglect. This isn't a sob story. It's a reckoning. One they never saw coming. I stared at the flickering candle in the center of the table, willing it to melt faster, as if the passing of wax could carry the weight of my disappointment away with it. The host came by for the third time to ask if I wanted to order. I lied again, said I was still waiting for someone. He nodded, but I could tell by the softness in his eyes that he knew I was lying. People can smell abandonment. My graduation cap sat on the chair beside me. I had imagined this dinner so many times. Dad laughing at a joke I made, Mom tearing up when I gave them thank you cards I wrote by hand, Chloe snapping a picture of our food and tagging me proudly. Instead, I sat alone, untouched water sweating into the linen. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "Sorry, honey. We got caught up with Chloe's birthday. Didn't realize it was the same day. Rain check?" I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. Flash? Me, age 9. School talent show. Everyone had family in the crowd. Mine was stuck in traffic. Never showed. Flash. Me, age 15. Science fair finalist. The announcer reads the names of parents who came up to join their kids. I stood alone. Flash. Me, age 18. High school valedictorian. Chloe got flowers from the whole family for getting into a mid-tier college. I got a card. Unsigned. I used to think I was imagining it. That maybe I wasn't loud enough, exciting enough. That maybe, just maybe, love had to be earned. That if I smiled bigger, achieved higher, they would notice. That if I did everything right, they'd finally turn their heads and see me standing there, right in front of them. "Excuse me?" A voice interrupted my spiral. I looked up to see a waiter holding out a small white envelope. "A man dropped this off at the front. Said it was from your parents. Wrong address or something." My breath hitched. I took the envelope. The handwriting was familiar. My mom's loops, her slanted lowercase e. It was dated 2 days ago. Inside, 2 tickets to a jazz concert from a month ago, and a sticky note that read, "To Lena, congrats on finishing strong. Proud of you." 2 days ago. I blinked. Why send something that expired? Had they forgotten the date? Or remembered it too late? I walked home instead of calling a ride. I needed the cold air to shake something loose inside me. I didn't cry. Not anymore. That muscle had been worked too hard, too often. Now it just twitched in silence. When I got home, I pulled out the storage box under my bed. It smelled like old glue and paper, a time capsule of memories no one else kept. At the bottom was a letter, not a school certificate, not a ribbon. A letter, folded so many times the edges had softened. It was from my mother. Written in cursive, dated 12 years ago. "If someday you feel like I don't love you, please know it's not your fault. Sometimes love doesn't know how to wear the right face." What? I read it again. And again. 12 years ago. I would have been 10. Why would a mother write this to her child at 10? I felt the breath leave my lungs, like the truth had just entered the room and vacuumed the air. I needed answers, not assumptions, not therapist-approved rationalizations. Real words, real context. I called Aunt Sheila, Chloe's mom. She had always been gentler with me than anyone else. She invited me over. No hesitation. Her house smelled like cinnamon. Comforting. Safe. "Lena," she said after I asked her, "there's something you never knew." My stomach tensed. "Before you were born, your mom had a son. He died during delivery. She was never the same." She paused, looked away, then added, "When Chloe came to live with us, after my divorce, your mom asked if Chloe could stay over more. She said it helped, reminded her of him. Him. A ghost I never knew I was competing with." "And me?" I whispered. She hesitated. I think you became a shadow of that memory. Not on purpose, but your mom, she never fully let go." I sat in silence, every piece of my life reassembling itself in new shapes. Not neglect, not really. Not only grief, misplaced healing, emotional substitution. But still, I was the collateral. And that's when I realized they didn't forget my graduation. They remembered someone else's ghost louder than my living presence. And I was tired of haunting my own life. The morning after the dinner that never happened, I sat on the floor of my dorm room with a notebook in my lap. No music, no phone, just silence and ink. I titled the page, 100 Things I've Done to Be Loved. By number 12, I was already crying. Skipped my 8th birthday party so Chloe could have hers that weekend. Gave up ballet because Mom said driving me and Chloe to different rehearsals was too much. Stayed silent when Chloe was praised for the science project I actually helped her finish. By 38, my hand was shaking. By 65, I couldn't feel my fingers. At 73, I stopped. Not because I ran out, but because I saw the pattern. I had been auditioning for a role I was born into. Daughter. But they only saw me as a placeholder. A good girl who didn't need attention because she wasn't a handful. The irony? I had no hands left. I gave them all away. I threw myself into school, honors classes, research projects, volunteer hours. I turned down parties, ignored flirting, rejected love, all for a GPA that I hoped would finally turn their heads. When I won the Chancellor's full scholarship, I left the certificate on the kitchen counter. They never mentioned it. I emailed it to Mom, just in case she missed it. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. So I tried harder. I earned every award I could. Stayed up for 48 hours straight, designing a neuroscience exhibit. Got published in an undergrad medical journal. I built a LinkedIn profile so perfect it looked like a parody. Still, silence. Then came the Parent-Professor Conference. A once-a-year meeting where students' families could meet the faculty, see presentations, get recognized for their support. I told my parents a month ahead, sent reminders, booked their flights, paid the hotel fees out of my own savings. That morning I stood in the auditorium lobby, clutching my speech. Faculty passed by, nodding. "Your parents not here yet?" one of them asked. I smiled. "Just running late." 2 hours passed. I sat through everyone else's presentations. Students received hugs, flowers, applause. One mom cried when her daughter read a poem dedicated to her. I read mine to an empty row. Afterward, as I walked outside, I saw the photo notification pop up on my phone. Chloe, in a glittery gold dress. Caption, "Birthday shopping with the best parents in the world." They had chosen tulle and sequins over me. That night, I didn't cry. I passed out on the floor of my room while trying to take off my shoes. I woke up in a white room, IV in my arm, heart monitor beeping. A nurse leaned over. "You fainted. Severe exhaustion. We tried contacting your emergency contacts. No answer." Did anyone come?" I croaked. She hesitated. "A girl. Said she's your cousin." "Chloe." She entered the room like a secret. No makeup. Hoodie. eyes rimmed red like she'd been crying too. She held a photo album in her hands. "I found this in the attic," she said softly. "It's all you." I opened the album. Baby pictures. Me in overalls, me with cake on my face, me holding a crayon drawing that said, "I love Mom." I blinked. I'd never seen these. "They kept them," Chloe whispered. "All these years. Just not out where you'd see." I looked up, unsure whether to scream or thank her. She sat beside me. Quiet for a moment, then, "I used to think you had it better." I scoffed. "What?" "You were independent, smart, strong. They never pressured you to be someone else." I stared. "They dressed me in blue because that was his favorite color. Made me take piano even when I hated it. Mom cried when I cut my hair once, said I was ruining his memory. I didn't know who he was. I just knew I wasn't allowed to be me." My breath caught. "You weren't loved more," she said. "You were just loved quieter. Me? I was their second chance. But I never asked to be." We sat in silence. Two girls, raised under the same roof but in different storms. We weren't enemies. We were collateral. The day I signed the lease for my own place, I felt two things at once: terror and freedom. The room was barely more than a converted storage closet with a single window, a flickering ceiling light, and plumbing that groaned like it held grudges. But it was mine. No scent of Chloe's perfume lingering in the hallway, no reminders of framed certificates that didn't have my name. Just four walls, a mattress on the floor, and silence. I sat in the middle of the room that night, the only light coming from my laptop screen. I pressed record on a voice memo app, unsure what I planned to say. "My name is Lena Grace," I began, "and I think my family loves me, but they love someone else more, or maybe louder." I spoke for 23 minutes, about the dinner they forgot, about growing up next to a memory I was never allowed to compete with, about the moment I realized I wasn't unloved. I was just inconvenient. I uploaded the file to a private YouTube link and forgot about it. 3 days later, my inbox exploded. Someone had found it, clipped a minute-long segment, added subtitles, posted it on TikTok. It went viral. Thousands of comments flooded in, people who felt invisible, who were told to be grateful while their siblings were celebrated, who grew up in houses full of noise and felt like whispers. Every notification felt like a heartbeat, finally syncing with mine. Then the message came. It was from an anonymous email. No name, no profile picture. "I saw your video. Your story is mine too. I want to share something with you, something big." At first, I hesitated. Internet anonymity often wore danger as perfume. But curiosity gnawed at my spine. I replied with a burner address. They sent a file, a scanned letter, yellowed, dated, signed. The name on the signature chilled me. Daniel. I had never heard that name before. The message continued. "This is a letter your mother wrote me 23 years ago. I think it's time you knew the truth." I opened the attachment. It was a breakup letter. My mother's handwriting. Identical to the loops I saw on grocery lists, birthday cards, sticky notes stuck to Chloe's lunchboxes. But this was not addressed to my father. It was addressed to Daniel. In the letter, she apologized for hiding the pregnancy, for not telling him about the baby. She wrote about being scared, about how she planned to raise the child alone. The child. Me. My throat tightened. I read the final line over and over. If I ever see this child grow up, I'll see him in her eyes. I'm sorry. The baby boy who died wasn't her husband's son, which meant Chloe wasn't their second chance. I was. My fingers trembled as I typed. "Who are you?" The response was immediate. Your biological father. I shut the laptop and stared into the dark. The timeline in my head shattered like glass. My whole life I thought I was background noise to someone else's grief. But what if I was the center of a different story entirely? One that had been buried, hidden, edited. The next day, I made a decision. I changed the name of my podcast to The Ghost Daughter. It fit now more than ever. Each week, I released an episode. Stories of children erased, of sons who raised their siblings, of daughters turned into shadows. People called in, sent voice notes, wrote poems. The comment section became a church of survivors. I didn't speak about my father. Not yet. Then came the TED Talk invite. They said the theme was Invisible Legacies. I laughed, said yes. When I walked onto the red dot stage, I didn't wear a suit. I wore the same navy dress I had worn to that forgotten graduation dinner. I told the story not from a place of bitterness, but of reclamation. I used to think being forgotten made me less real, I said. Now I realize it makes me living proof that memory isn't always evidence of love. Sometimes forgetting is how people survive, but we don't have to stay ghosts just because someone else tried to bury us. The talk reached over 5 million views in a week. After the standing ovation, I found an envelope waiting at the backstage table. No name, just, "Thank you for telling the truth, even when no one else would." Inside was a photo. Me as a toddler, sitting on the lap of a man I didn't recognize. Daniel. Behind us, my mother, smiling. Smiling like she knew she couldn't keep the lie forever. But for that moment, she had everything. I folded the photo carefully. For once, I didn't feel rage. I didn't even feel betrayed. I felt reclaimed. Everything I thought I lacked had been there all along, just buried under someone else's pain. And now, I was digging it up. I didn't knock. I used the key they'd forgotten to ask for back. The house looked smaller than I remembered, as if years of silence had compressed the walls inward. The photos on the mantel were the same. Chloe laughing, Chloe with birthday balloons, Chloe in a cap and gown. I wasn't in a single frame. I walked into the kitchen where the air always smelled like lemon floor cleaner and avoidance. They were both there. Mom rinsing a dish, Dad reading something on his tablet. For a second, it felt normal. Then I placed the folder on the counter between us. "What's this?" Dad asked without looking up. "Proof," I said. "About me. About the story you kept from me for 22 years. Mom froze. He looked at her. She looked at the folder. No one moved. "Go ahead," I said. "Open it." Dad flipped through the pages. His eyebrows furrowed, then dropped. This is DNA. It's mine, and his, Daniel's. He closed it slowly, set it down, like it was poison that could leak through skin. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said. "No," I replied. "I understand exactly." Mom reached for the folder, but her hands were shaking. She didn't open it, just held it like it might collapse if touched too hard. "I'm your daughter," I said, my voice low. "Not just biologically. I grew up here, in this house, with this silence, with the crumbs of attention left behind." "You are our daughter," Mom whispered. "Am I? Because my entire life you treated me like I was extra, like I came with strings you didn't want to untangle." "Because we were protecting you," she said too quickly. "You were too young." "No," I snapped. "You were protecting yourselves, from guilt, from memory, from having to look at me and see the past. But you forgot I was also the present." Dad stepped forward. "You think this makes you better than us? You think this piece of paper erases what we did for you?" "What did you do for me?" I asked. He pointed. "We gave you a roof, food, education. Obligations, I cut in. Not love, not presence, not truth. He slammed a fist on the counter. It's all in the past. You want to destroy this family over ancient history? No, I said, calm now. You destroyed it when you decided silence was safer than honesty. That's when Mom fell to her knees. It was sudden, almost theatrical. But the tremble in her shoulders wasn't for show. Don't hate me, she cried. I didn't know how to love right. I thought if I just kept going, if I loved Chloe harder, I could fix it. Fix me. I stood frozen. Hearing your mother say she never learned how to love, it rewires something in your brain. You should have tried with me, I said, barely audible. She looked up. Her eyes were red, raw. I was scared. She whispered, You look too much like him. Every time I tucked you in, I remembered the child I never got to hold. And I said, voice breaking, was right there, wanting to be held. No one spoke for a long time. Then Chloe appeared in the doorway, holding a duffel bag. I'm moving out, she said simply. What? Mom blinked. This isn't my storm to stand in. It never was. She turned to me. You're not the only one who lost something in this house. Then she left. I didn't follow her. In the days that followed, there were no texts, no calls, no apologies. Dad sent a single email. You've made your choice. We'll respect that. I stared at those words longer than I should have. I didn't reply. Because for once I didn't need to explain myself. Because for once, silence was mine to keep. And in that silence, I felt something strange. Peace. Not joy, not triumph, but peace. The kind that comes when you've stood at the edge of a cliff and screamed, and no longer care who hears. Weeks passed. I moved into a better apartment. I bought new furniture. I adopted a rescue cat and named her Echo. Then came the invitation, a global psychology summit. The theme, misguided love and generational scars. I was asked to speak. At first, I hesitated. But then I remembered that girl in the mirror who once practiced smiles to earn affection. She deserved a voice. On stage, I told the truth. About ghost daughters. About quiet sons. About families who use grief as a shield. About how love, when filtered through trauma, doesn't always look like love at all. I didn't cry until I saw her in the back row, disguised in a scarf and glasses. My mother. She didn't approach me after. She just sat there, hands clasped, watching like she'd never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't, but I had finally seen myself, and I wasn't invisible anymore. The first thing I did was tape a photo of myself at age 5 into my wallet. It wasn't a particularly flattering photo, hair sticking up, jelly on my cheek, holding a lopsided paper heart. But that's why I chose it. It was real. That little girl had spent her entire childhood asking for a love that was always just out of reach. Now, it was my job to give it to her. Every morning I'd pull out the photo and whisper to her, "You're enough," even when they don't see you. It felt ridiculous at first, like a bad self-help cliché. But something shifted after the first week. I stopped waking up with the weight in my chest. I stopped rehearsing imaginary confrontations in the shower. The ache in my jaw, from years of silent clenching, started to fade. I called it reparenting. Not because I was replacing my parents, but because I was choosing not to wait for them anymore. Instead of love being something I had to earn, I decided it could be something I deserved. No performance, no accolades, no conditions. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Her office was filled with plants and soft chairs and books about grief that didn't look like grief. She asked questions no one ever had. When did you first feel invisible? What would you say to that version of you if you met her now? I told her the truth. I'd say, I'm sorry I made you work so hard to be loved. Progress was slow. Some days I still flinched when my phone buzzed, expecting silence or worse. Some nights I still dreamed I was sitting at that graduation dinner table, waiting for chairs to be filled. But the difference now? I knew how to wake myself up. One rainy Tuesday, I received a voice memo from Chloe. I almost didn't play it. Then I saw the file name. Mom. Her voice came through first, barely above a whisper. If I could do it all over again, she said, I would hold Lena more. I would say her name louder. I would tell her she didn't have to be strong all the time. My hands shook. She looked so much like him. Mom's voice continued, and I let that scare me. I was wrong. She was never him. She was better. I didn't realize I was crying until I heard myself sob. It wasn't anger anymore. It was grief. But not for what they'd done. For what we'd all lost. For the years we could never get back. For the hugs that never happened. For the birthday candles I blew out alone. That night, I opened my podcast app and recorded a new episode. I got a message today, I told my listeners. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even directed at me. But it cracked something open. I paused. Forgiveness, I continued, isn't a door you open for others. It's a window you break, to let yourself breathe. The episode went viral. Not because it was perfect, but because it was human. Messages poured in from around the world. Parents who realized they'd unknowingly ignored one child in favor of another. Siblings reaching out after years of silence. Therapists sharing the episode in group sessions. What started as a cry for help had become a space for reckoning. We named the movement the Ghost Child Project. We built a team, designed workshops, trained facilitators in schools and family centers, held monthly healing circles, created curriculum for emotional validation. I spoke on panels, on national TV, on college campuses. But I never forgot the core truth. This wasn't about becoming famous. It was about not being invisible. One afternoon, as I was heading home from an interview, the doorman of my building handed me a small package. No return address. Inside, a single item wrapped in soft blue cloth, an album. The cover was cracked from age. Inside, page after page of photos. Of me. Not Chloe. Not anyone else. Me. Some I'd never seen before. Me asleep on Mom's chest. Me reaching for Dad's finger. Me dressed as a bumblebee on Halloween. But what struck me most were the notes scribbled in the margins. Lena's first steps ran straight into my arms. Lena's laugh at 2 a.m. sounded like bells. Lena's drawing. She said it was our family. I didn't have the heart to ask where I was. I closed the album slowly, then cried again. But this time, it was for that tiny hope that maybe, just maybe, they had loved me. Flawed, uneven, silently, but loved nonetheless. I didn't call her, didn't text. I wasn't ready for that. But I placed the album on my bookshelf, front and center. Proof that even ghosts can be remembered. I never moved back. Even when the wounds started to close. Even when the silence between us softened into something more tolerable. I stayed where I was. Not out of bitterness. Just clarity. Some houses are too full of echoes to ever feel like home again. But on holidays, we Zoom. Thanksgiving, Christmas, random Sundays when Chloe insisted we try to be normal. We'd all log on, awkward smiles and awkwarder jokes. Dad would fumble with the camera every time, cutting off the top of his head. Mom would nervously offer updates on the garden. The hydrangeas bloomed early this year, she'd say, as if that was a metaphor she didn't know she was making. And every time, before logging off, she'd pause. "Lena," she'd ask, voice careful. "Are you okay?" It was the same question every time, the same 4 words I spent my whole life waiting to hear. Sometimes I said yes, sometimes I didn't answer. But she kept asking, and that, in itself, was something. One Sunday, Chloe called me separately. She didn't even bother with small talk. "I'm pregnant," she said, straight into the phone. I blinked, stunned. "You are?" She laughed. "Yeah, I'm terrified." "Don't be," I said. "You'll be great." She went quiet. "I want to name her Lena," she whispered. The silence that followed felt infinite. "I want her to be strong," she continued, "but also soft. I want her to know that even if people don't always show up, she can still become someone whole, someone like you." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. "Are you sure?" I asked, barely breathing. "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. I didn't cry, but I smiled so hard it hurt. 8 months later, I met her. Tiny, wrinkled, pink-faced, and squirmy. She grabbed my finger with a grip far too strong for something so small. I whispered in her ear, "You're already loved," loudly. Time kept moving, and so did I. With support from donors and collaborators I'd met through the podcast, I opened the doors to the Echo Institute, a school for emotional education and healing. We didn't just teach parents how to listen, we taught them how to see. The first class had 5 families, then 15, then 50. We created courses on breaking generational trauma, on validating a child's invisible battles, on raising without replacing. Every wall of the institute had a quote on it. My favorite was the one in the lobby. "You cannot raise a child from the shadow of another." The day of the opening ceremony, I wore white, not for purity, but for peace. I stood on stage, a microphone in hand, staring at a crowd of faces I once thought I'd never reach. Then I pulled out a slip of paper. "I want to share something," I said. "It's not mine, at least, not originally." I unfolded it slowly. "It's a lullaby," I said. "My mother used to hum it. I always thought she sang it for someone else, for a child she lost, but I recently found out she sang it to me." The room stilled. I read the words aloud, simple, gentle, full of ache. "If the stars forget your name, I'll whisper it each night the same. If the world feels cold and wide, come find me on the softer side." I looked up. My mother was in the crowd, sitting beside Dad. Both of them older now, smaller somehow, but there. She didn't cry, but her eyes glistened with something that looked like understanding. After the ceremony, she came to me quietly. "I really did sing it for you," she said. "I know," I replied. We didn't hug, but she reached out and touched my arm. It was enough. The next morning I received a letter. No name on the envelope. Inside, a photo. Me. Age 5. Same jelly-cheeked photo. But this time, it was taped inside a journal page filled with my mom's handwriting. "She used to laugh in her sleep," it read, "and I used to wonder if maybe she was dreaming of a world where I did better." I folded the paper and placed it in my wallet, behind the photo I'd carried all this time. It felt like the end of a circle, but also the start of one, a beginning. Not loud, but real.